All right. Awesome. So we are recording. We are here for day one. Day one. Oh my gosh. I don't know. This has just been on my heart and on my mind for so long. So I'm so excited to finally be here. Welcome officially to the 5-day event to help you cope without using food. As you're hopping on, please come say hello. I want to be able to say hi to you. If you're watching the replay here in the group because you couldn't join us live, by all means, please say replay. I'll make sure I'll come on there, click like, say hi to you. While you're doing that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you don't receive an email and you have joined the event on my website where you actually put your email in, I want you to go ahead and just email support@healthcoach4life.com. So healthcoach, the number 4life.com. Just send a quick email. Let me know that you joined, but you're not receiving the emails. Remember, all the daily emails, all of the replays of the videos, any of the attachments, anything I've created for the event will be available on the archive page that's linked in every single daily email. I actually went in there. So already we have day 0 and of course day 1. And then this replay will be uploaded. So you'll have access to rewatch and grab that through March 16th. Through March 16th, that's available. If you are watching this live here in our private group, but you've not joined, you're like, hey, what is this? I really want to. You can just add your email and join at healthcoach4life.com/emotional eating event. I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Hey, Kieran, how are you? So glad you're here. Let me grab that link. I think it wants the www though. You'll get mad at me if I don't put that in. It's also, you can find it in the top banner. If you click on the page, you'll find it there as well. Just click on the picture of the event, it'll take you there. So if you are here, you're part of our group, but you didn't join and you want to make sure you have the replays, you want to actually receive, there's added information in the emails. Like I wrote everything out for that and I add on to it as I come in and do these lives for the next few nights. We're here, 5 days. So everything is here to support you, encourage you, give you tools and strategies, all of that. And if you are part of our group, but you didn't join, and I reference the handout or something from the email and you're like, what is that? I want you to go ahead and be able to grab that. So I just put that link in the comments. And if you do that tonight, you should still get the email for day 2 and then access to the archive page. If you're watching from the archive page, so awesome, yay. You can also just send your questions you have or things that come up for you while you're watching it to support@healthcoach4life.com. Yay, awesome. So I just want to make sure I keep those comments somewhere handy. Make sure I have you guys on here. So if you do come on and you hop on live, be sure to say hi. If you have questions as things come up, don't hesitate to ask. So before we dive into the pros and cons of emotional eating, just want to take a quick peek at what you did receive in today's email. So I created that top emotions PDF, and hopefully you were able to identify the top ones for you. And like I said, we're going to come back to that information on day 4. So hang on to it. It could be one of those ones you put a star in the email, or I know I have a lot of ladies when I've done this event, they like to print the stuff out from the event and you just have it handy with you. So we're going to come back to the top emotions PDF, and hopefully again, it was something you could connect with. These are the top 7, right, emotions that we experience. And then I loved that there's under each of those 7, there's more descriptors of feelings. So hopefully you were able to say, yeah, like here's my top 3. Hi, Christine. So glad you're here. Just kind of reviewing what was in the email already today before we dive in here. So on today's post, you'll also notice each day I put a post in our group, and it's going to be directly related to that email, the topic, what we're talking about on that day. And, I understand like some of these things are kind of personal. They might feel really heavy and weighted to you. But hopefully, even if you don't share in the comments, it gets you thinking. It has you getting curious for yourself, and you just even notice what comes up for you. So today, the question I asked was to share what you felt are the pros and cons for you of emotional eating. And I know I went in there today and shared one. I don't know if I have it handy. I think I have them right here. Isn't that funny when you write something and you can't remember it? I said, for me, a big con was always the immense and also immediate guilt I felt. Big con for me. Um, it was as soon as I was done eating the food that was, I'm going to kind of share those pros that was serving a purpose, I would almost immediately experience guilt, that feeling of regret. Sometimes it would go to shame. So those are a few of the cons I experienced. Some other cons are isolation when we emotionally eat. You can even have a physical discomfort. You can have sensations even in your body that don't feel good. But like I said, there's pros to emotional eating as well. I mean, and if there weren't pros, we wouldn't do it. So it could be that it offers you comfort. It could be a distraction to what's going on, to what you're feeling, to the specific emotion. It helps is to just serve as a distraction. Some people even describe it as kind of a respite, a way to get away from those emotions, even feels safer when you're doing that. And again, if we have these pros, right, there might be a con directly attached to it. That's how it was for me. And we have both. I think we're very quick to judge and criticize emotional eating. That could come from early experiences in your family. We see it a lot in messages in the media, television, even television shows the way emotional eating is portrayed and maybe who is portraying the emotional eating. It definitely comes if you have ever been on any type of diet program. The weight loss industry, I think, is really great at shaming women for emotional eating. Put a note in the comments, whether you're here live or you're watching the replay, if you've ever experienced that. Either you self-criticized or maybe you've had someone else criticize you for emotional eating. If you've ever experienced that, you can give me a yep, totally know what you mean. Christine, fearful would be on my top emotion. Great. I'm glad you got that handout and definitely connected with that. Thanks for sharing that. I do appreciate it. All right. So in the comments, whether you're watching live here, you're with us, or you're watching the replay, just let me know, have you ever noticed that you've done that self-criticism? Or maybe someone else has criticized you for emotionally eating. The truth is, we have really forgotten how deeply food is tied to the need for comfort and safety. I mean, if you think about it, it really starts like with birth. I think about the crying newborn. I had 4. They all did the same thing, right? That crying newborn. And how do you comfort them? You feed them. They have milk, whether it's breast or bottle. They receive comfort and pleasure immediately. I can remember watching my sweet babies. They would go from that, I don't know if you had this, it bless you if you did not, the blood curdling scream, like, oh my gosh, but to totally calm and peaceful. And I actually can remember as the mom, in that situation with any of my kids, like it calmed my stress level when my baby would go from crying to calm. if you're a mom on here, if you've experienced that, you can let us know, because if you know, like immediate comfort and peace. And even if it's that, you remember that sweet baby, like, we're getting to the place of calmness. But I really do. When I was writing this up and thinking about when it starts, and we're probably not, I don't know a lot of people who are criticizing using food for comfort or pleasure for babies. I don't know anyone criticizing that, right? But when I was thinking about that, I was going back to, what my children, my babies were experiencing, but what I was experiencing as well. So think about that. If it starts that young, if we're comforted, if we receive pleasure, then over time, that connection is going to deepen whenever food is offered to soothe, a childhood ache, right? If you fall down and you get some ice cream, if you're sick and you get to have a popsicle or your favorite soup, celebrating events. I mean, think about birthday parties and all of that, milestones. It deepens even when we are showing love in that way. Somebody makes you something. I always think, for me, that's my grandmother, who passed away a year ago. And that's how she showed love. You did not walk into her house without a pot of sauce. I don't think Courtney's here. Gravy, Courtney would say, marinara, that was on the stove ready for you to eat, pasta sitting there, good to go. That's how she showed love. Christy, I often feel that I've self-sabotaged myself by eating things like candy and pretzels. Yeah, those snack foods. We're going to talk, Christine, you bring up something really great, and we're going to talk about cravings even, and I wonder if that'll fit in there, and you'll find throughout all 5 days how so much of that we address. Criticize myself often for my food choices. Yeah, I think we do. I like to keep in mind that emotional eating covers the spectrum of emotions. So it's a positive experience and gives us pleasure if maybe you have a slice of cake at a wedding. I don't know if anyone does that anymore. All I've seen are like donut walls lately and dessert tables. But, when I got married, everyone still had wedding cake. And, it is this positive experience. We have pleasure in celebrating, right? And it can also be destructive when we use it to numb out our feelings, or if it's used as a form of self-punishment even. So I know there's a couple dynamics that can even be going on with emotional eating. It's not just to numb out feelings. Like, we can even use food as a form of punishment. So what we're doing here today, so day one, is acknowledging that emotional eating has served us. This, I really do believe this is so important to do if you want to heal from the negative feelings and all the negative self-talk that you have had as it relates to eating. This part right here, what we're doing today, acknowledging the pros, acknowledging the benefits we've experienced from emotional eating. So first and foremost, can you tell yourself that emotional eating of any kind was your way of trying to take care of yourself? Not a debate, right? This is not a right or wrong. It's what you knew to do. I mean, maybe it was the easiest way to cope when you had no other way. Taking this viewpoint of emotional eating really does invite us to be more compassionate with ourselves. When we approach this work, approach healing our relationship with food, healing our body, really working through intuitive eating, all of that. When we approach this work with more self-compassion, it really does make the work easier. And believe me on this, it makes it more enjoyable. So more compassion is going to leave very little room for judgment and criticism. I mean, if you think about like this bubble and we have room for, judgment, criticism are kind of in there, and we kind of fill that space with compassion, there's not going to be room for that judgment and criticism to get in here. The more compassion we have, the less judgment, the less criticism. Let me know in the comments whether you're here with us tonight or you're watching the replay, if you could use more compassion in your life. I know for me, I know walking this journey, I share it, I've lived it, but walking this, that's exactly what I needed. More compassion for myself. I could have compassion pretty much for anybody else. I could hand it out in droves. I could just like, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. But when it came to having that for myself, it was hard to come by. So my first job here was to be more compassionate to myself. And I believe when we're more compassionate, we're going to be less judgmental and less critical of ourselves. Absolutely, Christine says, I love that. I love that. So maybe you have sat down with the email that came out and the post from today, and you already listed a pro and a con of emotional eating. Great. Take some time to really actually exhaust those lists if you can. All the possible ways in which emotional eating has benefited you. For instance, if it gave you comfort, if it actually was a distraction, and maybe that's not a way you thought of it. Maybe you've only thought of it as comfort, but when you start digging into it, you're like, yeah, I was able to distract myself from what was going on because I was thinking about the food. Maybe it was a respite from your feelings. The feelings were just too much and you went to food and you didn't have to feel that as strongly. It kind of lessened that for you. When you write these down, when you look at what emotionally eating has done for you, you can see that even if it was temporary, right? It was in just the moments, emotional eating has helped you. It served you in some way. And you'll hear me say this again and again, we wouldn't do it if there wasn't a benefit. If there were only cons, right? If there were only cons to it, we'd probably do it once and never ever do it again, right? There's probably something in your life that you tried once, you're like, nah, I'm good. For me, I'd say that was the half marathon. I mean, I had it on my bucket list. There were pros and cons to it. But pretty much the cons outweigh any of the pros. And for me, I'm like, I'm good. I'm never doing that again. I mean, holla to all of you who love to run and do the 5Ks and the, half marathons and all of that. I give you high fives all over the place, but for me, it was just about the con, right? So I know I'm not going to do it again. But when we think about emotional eating, there are pros. There are things it has done to help you. So spend time really thinking about it. And maybe for you, what comes up are specific instances. Maybe you have strong memories even of when it helped you, when it was serving you, a certain time in your life, a season you were going through, certain events that were happening. Now, when you've done that and you've really written those out, take some time to write about the cons of emotional eating that you've experienced. Anyways, list them all the ways that emotional eating has negatively affected your life. Maybe you related to what I shared at the beginning. You felt isolated. You have experienced that physical discomfort because you're disconnected from your body, you're not paying attention. And maybe there was, excessive eating because you're completely checked out. So your body just feels sick. When you make this list, I want to make sure I say this really clearly. When you're making this list of the cons, This is why it's important to be really, really compassionate with yourself. Oftentimes, even when we've looked at this, because we want to curb the behavior, we want to stop, we're experiencing things like the guilt and the shame. And I just wish I could get a control of this. In the past, you've come to it from a place of judgment. There's something wrong with me. I feel bad. I'm terrible. I can't get this under control. I want you to remind yourself you have not done anything wrong. You did the best you could at the time. You might need to actually say those words. If walking through this exercise, it would just be, when these things are coming up and I'm writing all the cons and maybe specific instances are coming up, or even, thinking about how hiding or sneaking and shame, putting snacks away somewhere else so I could use them. When all of those things come up, just telling myself, you didn't do anything wrong here. You didn't know anything else to do. Is the easiest thing you could do in the moments. For most of us, the most accessible coping mechanism is food. Where we live, most of us can get that in our homes and have that. And if it's been reinforced since birth, it's no wonder it becomes default mode. So if you take the time, and I think you're here, right? You're part of this 5-day event because you want help in this area. You want to understand your emotional eating. You want to learn to cope without using food. You want to feel that this has some traction forward of releasing it for you. Make the lists as best you can, write them down. And you might notice how those cons outweigh the pros. Like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I don't feel good physically, emotionally, mentally. Like, I don't want to hide. I don't want to do all these cons are outweighing the pros of some comfort and some distraction. And, even the celebrating part, like all the cons start to outweigh the pros. I would say that's probably a good thing that you're here and why you're even here. So if that's the case, if those cons are outweighing the pros, the next handful of days are going to help you really find new ways to cope. I have it set up so you have a better understanding of what to do next. So day 2, tomorrow's email is coming out. We are going full in. I think tomorrow's work is going to open up some ways to look at emotional eating that maybe you've never looked at before. It might even have you approaching this work, yes, with more compassion, but also with fresh eyes, with a new perspective. Now, if you haven't signed up yet, I'll remind you, I did put it in the comments. It's also on the page. Pretty much everywhere. You can find it right now. It's healthcoachforlife.com/emotional eating event. Day 2's email will be out. I think it goes out at 6 a.m. Mountain Standard Time where I am. I know time changes next week. So while we're doing this live, we have it at least not having to worry about a time change. But tomorrow, you're already going to have done this list, worked out the pros and cons, and hopefully you're seeing that the cons are outweighing the pros. You've identified emotions, those top 3. And we're going to bring all of this together over the next 5 days. Well, technically 4 now, because this is day 1. So be on the lookout for tomorrow's email in the morning. The post will be up at the same time right here in our group. And then same time, same place tomorrow for day 2, right here live in the group. And then the replays will all be accessible on the archive. I have been looking forward to this event probably since last year because it's been on my heart. It's been something that's coming up a lot in the work I do with my clients, but it's also just been coming up, especially over the last couple of weeks with what's going on in the world and still feeling not quite stable and okay the emotional eating part, I feel like this is such a perfect time to bring this in, to give you these tools, these strategies, and hopefully, above all else, you leave here too with a great sense of self-compassion and kind of maybe even use that visual of when we fill that bubble up with self-compassion, there's very little room for judgment and criticism. All right, I'm excited for this week. I'm excited for day 2. I look forward to seeing more of you when we hit Monday here. Christine, thanks for joining us. And I know we also had Kieran was on here as well. And I know there were some others might not have popped on. So glad you could make it live. For the rest of you, if you're watching the replay, I look forward to hearing your comments and feedback as well. All right, see you guys for day 2 tomorrow.